Hey everybody, it's Sean from Low Code Approach. Thanks everybody for, all the amazing suggestions that we had all year and guests to talk to and just topics to cover. We had a blast with that. We can't wait to do more, and we need your help with more topics at aka.ms/low code topic request. We also need your help with ratings and reviews on whatever platform you use to get your podcasts. So please drop a rating, drop a like, and follow us on LinkedIn at the Low Code Approach LinkedIn group. Can't wait to see you there. Hey everybody, welcome to a new episode of the Low Code Approach. I'm Sean Feeney, a Senior Product Marketing Manager on the Power Platform team, and I'm joined by...
It is I, your General Security, Jocelyn Pinchao, the Power Platform and Dataverse Security team. And typically, we have Wendy, but as some of you guys might know, Wendy has been on a series of bacon adventures, and through all of her bacon enhancements, she's been realizing there might be a disconnect with the bacon sales team. So this week, she's really busy making sure that they're properly educated on all of the news in the bacon world. But per always, we have...
Yes, hi everyone. Kenrick Lee Aguilard here today. I'm actually in Redmond, and Jocelyn did not want to be in the same room with me to record, which is okay. That's fine. With us today, Sean, who do we actually have with us?
Well, I'm glad. Actually, I'm super excited for the guest that we have today. So, you may know him as the NZ365 guy. You may know him as the host of the Microsoft Innovation Podcast, which is really a collection of 5 podcasts, if we're going to be honest. But we also know him as Mark Smith. Hey, Mark, how you doing?
Good to be here and excited after having Ken on my show a couple of 9 months ago or so. Was it Ken? I'm not sure.
It definitely was. And
Keen to discuss barbecue?
yeah, of course I did, Mark. It was a wonderful conversation, right? I think we have some other things in common. Like we were chatting before the podcast, and you were talking about your fasting. I have also, and do also occasionally do the same, do a 7-day water only fast.
Yeah.
Requires a lot of mental discipline. How are you enjoying your fast so far? Let's start with that.
Well, yesterday was bad. I'm at day 4 today, or almost finished day 4, so about to roll into day 5 come my midday. And I'm doing 7 days. And the last time I did it was just after the Vegas conference that we were both at. Kind of like a detox type process. But for me, it's all about getting the cellular regeneration in the body, right? Cleaning out everything that's bad and going into a state of what's called autophagy, where the cells of your body, all the bad cells particularly, get cleaned up and cleaned out. But I tell you what, I don't miss food because for the last year I have done a intermittent fasting. So I don't eat after 8 p.m. at night and don't eat till 12 p.m. the next day. And so I found it actually very easy to roll into fasting, but you always get the brain fog in the first couple of days as you go through that process. But I'm now on the other side. So I'm kind of in the euphoric state of I can take on anything.
So being that you're in the euphoric state, I'm assuming that you have agents all figured out now, Mark.
Agents is such an interesting topic. What are we going to talk about when it comes to agents?
I mean, what do you think of the state of the world today? Like all of a sudden we had chatbots and things along those lines. And then right now, all we hear is agents.
Mm-hmm.
It is just all over the world. Sean, myself, Jocelyn, and aside from Wendy, who is always looking for bacon.
A good thing to look for, by the way.
It is. It definitely is. We might be a little bit biased because we're here at Microsoft and we have Copilot and so on. You're out more so in the field, speaking with customers and many other individuals in the industry. What are you hearing right now? Is it just, agents just a buzzword, or is there a lot of concern? What are your initial thoughts on agents?
So agents is exciting, right? It's going to change the way everything happens for us. So I'm very pro agents. As with anything like this, the marketing always precedes the reality. And at the moment, we're in the marketing hype cycle of agents. When I look at the difference between an agent, a semi-autonomous agent, and an autonomous agent, I don't believe we're anywhere near close to autonomous agents at the moment. We're using it as a buzzword. We're saying, this is autonomous. I'm like, Autonomous, in my mind, is I say that to the agent, go do, and it comes back to me, and it's done, it's learned, it has memory. I think memory is going to be such an important context of agentification And I don't think we have that yet. And why memory and the ability for an agent to have memory is so important is that it can then learn. It can learn from that didn't work, and that, let's say it was a customer engagement, and therefore now I have learned that this is a better way to handle a situation. Next time I'm dealing in that scenario, I'm going to handle it this way. And so I'm frameworking into agents in my own life. So right now, I'm taking everything in both my professional and private life, and I'm writing SOPs for them, standard operating procedures for everything I do. How do I do my email? How do I do my scheduling? How do I handle my task list? How do I handle LinkedIn? How do I handle Facebook? How do I handle any of those kind of social medias? Because I've been heavily on those channels for some time. I think my LinkedIn is now around 30,000 followers on LinkedIn. I've got, X, previous when it was Twitter, I think I had about 10,000, 11,000, I don't know, 12,000 maybe on that. But I'm done with social media in 2025. And it's just because I'm into deeper work that I can't be distracted with that. But when I look at agents, I'm looking at how can I prepare for agents, even though I wish they were here right now. And I think that in the market, a lot of people are going, hey, is this just a name change? We saw what Benioff did around disparaging Copilot, that it was going through a name change, it's going to become agents and stuff like that from Salesforce. And the thing is that I think Microsoft are on such a good path around getting ahead of where the market is going, because I believe that every role in business that we work in will have agents involved. And then ultimately those agents will become robots that we have in our lives. And I think we're less than 5 years away from everybody, if they choose, they could purchase a robot. And that's going to totally change things. When I think of an agent, if I think of an agent that was my home agent, if you like, around just my groceries list. And, I typically order my groceries on a Monday. They get delivered to me, via a delivery truck and things like that. My agent, if it was fully autonomous, it would know that I missed a Monday, and it would proactively, maybe it might say to me, hey, you realize you missed that? Did you want me to order just your standard stuff? I see you didn't get time to get to it. And I'd be, yeah, sure, go for it. And it would do it. It would be looking for the things that I was missing in my life or shouldn't be doing. And then I can't wait till I have a voice agent that goes out with my full voice imprint and acts on my behalf out in the market. And what I'm talking about there is, the airline cancels a flight and you got to rebook and stuff. I just want my agent to go and do it, that has scanned all their policies and procedures, but will use that against them to operate on my behalf. And I don't have to go through that tiresome call to that airline, because my agent will do it and they won't even know that it's my agent necessarily doing it. But I just think it's going to take a lot of friction out of my life. And that's what excites me. Hey, by the way, my Google Home has just come up with your boss in Vegas with me out one night in a bar. Coincidentally, I don't know how Ryan's photo just came up there, but it does from my feed. But I just see it taking friction out of life. And so I don't know, by the end of 2025, will we be there? I think we'll be a long way along, but I think 2026 is when, you and I are all going to have multiple agents that are going to do our bidding. And I suppose the biggest thing that excites me, I'm looking at, could I do an hour of work, my input, and ultimately get to 10 hours output because I'm working with agents and what I do? And then I'm like, well, if I can get to 10, why couldn't I get to 200 hours? Why couldn't I get to 500 hours? And so I think there's going to be this massive scaling ability, and scaling is one of my favorite terms, to be able to take an hour of my human input, but then use agents to do so much. And what I believe, when I say output, I'm talking about, if I'm in my own business, that's profit to me, that's more revenue and what I can do. Yeah, I think the possibilities with the concept of agents is, I don't think we've comprehended how big it will be.
So I'm going to hop in here and not necessarily pivot the topic of agents, but another pillar in agents. Like, I've offset a bunch of efficiency with the use of agents in my life and in my work, but I need to make sure I get buy-in. Now, I got to get buy-in by my boss, and I got to get buy-in by IT. And so I'm going to drop the two deadly words that come into this podcast, because we've got a representative on the product team from both of these sides: governance and security. Mark, tell me, because I'm in marketing for governance and security, Power Platform. Mm-hmm. Tell me what you're hearing, man, because I am the marketing hype behind this. How far ahead of the skis did I get? Help me out.
Security is an interesting thing, and let's talk about now customers and that I'm having conversations and stuff with, is that I think one of the challenges, like when people go, oh, the AI hallucinates, or the thing is, if I look at the work that you do in your life, the Word files, Excel, so the spreadsheets, the Word, the PowerPoints, the legal documents, etc., you might look at, there's going to be errors in them. And the reason there's going to be errors in them is because you're a human. And humans make errors. We don't intentionally do it. But then what happens is somebody takes that document you produced and they create a copy of it. And then somebody else takes that and they create a copy of that. And so then we go, hey, let's use a Microsoft Graph to look at that data. And we go, oh no, it made a mistake. And it's looking at maybe 500 copies of errors, human errors that have crept in. And so what I say to organizations, you need to look at not the 10 million digital artifacts that you have. You need to pare that down to 5,000 artifacts for the particular AI use case. And you can take that and pare that down to maybe 500 documents once you've vetted those 5,000 down to the 500. Make sure they're clean and then train your models on that. So that's one thing from making sure AI gives us a right response. And then we go to security. I think the biggest issue that organizations have, and what I hear, is that their approach to security is what I call a walled garden. And what I mean by that, they go, hey, the concept of a walled garden is that we'll put a big high wall around our data, our people, we'll call it a firewall, we'll have various protections to make sure somebody can't get into our organization. But then inside the organization is virtually no security. And so where Microsoft is going to a zero trust protocol, I think is critically important, because this is about protecting what's going inside the network. And when it comes to security and AI, where you then give access to all that data, of course, it can find patterns that normal people or non-people that are smart at writing good queries will expose that data inside the organization, and particularly PII information, right? You have somebody join a company and we send them out a form and say, hey, we just need to gather a bunch of information before you onboard. Who's your next of kin? Oh, by the way, what's their phone number? What's your relationship to them? Oh, they're your spouse. Great. Now, that's high PII data, right? And then you do that and you've used a SharePoint list to do it as an example. That's what most organizations do, right? If they're not thinking about, of a quick way to capture data, they're going to do a form over a SharePoint list, and that data is never thought of again, right? If emergency comes up, people look at it's probably been streamed into the human resource solution by that point, but the list is still there. And then you get Creeper Joe in the business comes along and he wants to do a bit of stalking and can find all that information. Now, in the past, he might not have been able to write a good query, but now he can just go to AI Copilot and say, hey, give me this information. If it's sitting in an unprotected SharePoint list or outside of Dataverse, this is why I'm a big proponent of Dataverse, because of that security protection it provides for you to go, hey, from Dataverse, we're only going to hydrate, Copilot with this segment of data rather than all data. And so I think that there's two prevalent things. People are becoming aware of how bad their data estate is and the need to address it. The concern is if they go, hey, nobody's ever going to get clean data. They've been trying for 30 years to get to clean data, right? I don't think anyone's going to get there. But for the sets that train AI, we've got to get that clean. And so rather than trying to boil the ocean of all our data, we need to look at the segments of data, go, hey, hang on, all that PII stuff, that needs to be in Dataverse. That's a no-brainer. We want to lock that down. We want to have, role-based access control to that type of thing rather than all comers can grab access. And so I think there's this move now to going, hang on a second, let's secure what's going on inside our data estate. Let's make sure that people are accessing data because they need to, not because they want to or not randomly looking for it. And of course, Copilot has accelerated that, right? Because it can find patterns that individuals, unless they're really good at writing queries, the data's been sitting in plain sight. It's what I've called security by obscurity. That's been the model that a lot of companies have used, right? Nobody knows how to find it. It's unsecure, but nobody knows how to find it. So it's all good. And I think what I'm seeing in customers is this move to go, hang on a second, we'll get much more smarter about how we secure our data estate inside the organization. In other words, behind the firewall.
It reminds me a little bit of, Mark, you remember the Delve conundrum.
Yep.
It's very similar to that, how enterprises started freaking out because Dell provided this canvas with a ton of visibility or even perceived visibility, right?
Yes.
Of why am I seeing this file? Why do I have access to this data? In the same token, the way you framed a little bit of the story there and talking about securing inside the network, it's surprising to me how many organizations, including large enterprises, don't use simple tools like Purview
Yeah.
to classify and label their data, which of course now works with Dataverse, and who we have a PM who's on the Dataverse team. Jocelyn, any comments about Purview and Copilot
First of
and
all, I
AI?
think if you keep calling it simple, Sean will hurt us off camera because we're not going with simple. Simple is so pejorative, Kenrick. We want easy to understand. We want comprehensive at the same time. And that's what I really think Purview is, because as simple as we call it, it really is a monster of a product that
Yes.
gives you visibility and compliance offerings like no other, and data protection capabilities. Like, it's very much so a fantastic overview. And what I think is most impressive about it right now is we hear a lot of confusion from customers. Sean has talked to me about this 5,000 times in the last 2 weeks about how customers don't know which agent we're talking about. There are so many different types of agents and so many different types of co-pilots from every different products group. What Purview offers is great visibility into many, 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 many of them, distilled down into the specific niche categories of each of them. So, for example, if we look at this from a Power Platform and business applications lens, we have visibility with data security posture management for AI, or AI Hub as Purview calls it, into how agents made by Copilot Studio are interacted with, right? And that gives you information like environment ID, and that's a Power Platform construct. So it really gives you that lens, like that high level Purview lens, but specified to whatever agent you're specifically referring to. And I think that's really awesome. A follow up question for you, though, because I thought what you were saying about the whole I put up a firewall and I'm good to go mentality that a lot of customers are telling you about. In a past life, I worked on the Power Platform connector ecosystem. So tell me, how does that I put up a wall mentality that customers might have interact with the whole drive for extensibility as well? How do they balance that?
That is a balancing procedure, right? It's just like I used to teach a course 20 years ago, maybe longer, on internet working. And it was like you could put your valuables in a bank vault, right, in a secure lockbox, and they would be secure as long as that bank wasn't robbed and your lockbox wasn't taken away. The problem with that is that you've got to get in your car, you got to go to that bank, you got to get your keys, you got to get past security, you got to get in, right? So it doesn't make it good if you're just keeping the cash that you'd normally keep in your wallet, right, in that bank vault, because it'd be too much of a hassle to go and buy a stick of gum if you had to go to your bank vault each time to get that out. And like security is the same thing when it comes to innovation, extensibility, access, that type of thing. You've got to balance enough security without it becoming burdensome to an organization. And I think that what I love particularly about Purview is that I don't have to classify the document that I'm working on at a certain security level. If I've got Purview running, it'll look at the content and it will classify it for me. And I think that's the smart thing. So security that happens without the individual person having to think, how should I secure this in any situation?
Let me chime in there, Mark. There are some organizations, companies, partners, even sometimes I am guilty of it. When we talk to customers or speak in public, we almost lead with a bit of fear and anxiety when we're talking about these new emerging technologies. Oh, you have to do these things because X risk or, whatever that may be. You touched on something earlier, and we've been saying it quite a lot over the past several months, Microsoft's Secure Futures Initiative. And it's not that we weren't doing things the way I'm about to say in the past, but we have really doubled, tripled, quadrupled, maybe even quintupled down on
Really far down, Ken.
it is very far down, Jocelyn, being secure by default.
Yeah.
So that, the narrative that you just, so brilliantly laid out for us, it becomes less of a problem, less of a thought for the customer, right? For the person that's adopting this, because they don't have to worry as much because now the platform is just natively secure by that. And I think, you've been very gracious in your opinions of our products in the past, but also you've been openly and very critical of calling us out where we've had gaps. I think that from my own perspective, we're on the right track. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on, as well as how being secure by default could potentially influence a customer's decision to adopt the platform.
Yeah, interesting. So one thing, I think that security can be done in such a way that doesn't hinder at all. And I'll give you an example. 20 odd years ago, Bill Gates said we're going to secure the Windows operating system. Prior to that, I had virus scanners that I had to keep updated and things like that on my system. It's been a very long time since I've thought about updating my virus scanner, right? Because it's built into Windows now. I don't even think about it. It's there. It does its job. It automatically updates itself with anything that's new. And I have that level of security that I now rely on because it was constructed in such a great, seamless way. Same with email. The security that you get now and being able to pick up phishing email and spam in a lot of cases is now just inherently built in. So I've got that security. Now, in the Southern Hemisphere, in the last couple of years, we've had two major ransomware cases. One was for a healthcare company, and they got in and they'd been on the network for, I think, months in this case inside this organization. And of course, they made their ransomware claims. In this case, it wasn't a lockdown ransomware. It was like, hey, we're going to release all your patient data to the internet if you don't pay up. This agency decided to think they'd call their bluff. They thought they were protected, right? Because, hey, they had good firewall procedures in, they had great protection in, and they published it. And the ramification was phenomenal. People's health records were put up, publicly available, passport information. A lot of people had to go get new passports, driver's license, all this PII data was all leaked out there. And I remember talking to a guy in procurement for a major airline, and he was a procurement arm of the organization, so not really the buyer, but the gatekeeper to buying. And I talked about security. I was like, we are so secure. Like, nobody can get through our firewall or get into us. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's like, he wasn't concerned about security inside because of that walled garden type perception. And I think it's just a very risky profile to take that our firewall is our only line of protection for an organization. And I think more and more organizations are cottoning on. And I think AI is driving that. Because all of a sudden, what was prevalent in their data all along, as I say, is now easily findable. And that is changing the posture and the position of a lot of organizations.
So let's take a forward-looking question here. You mentioned before, hey, I can build a agent and then I can just exponentially grow my efficiency. So I can, 100 times efficient, 500 times efficient, right? Exactly. How do you keep up with the pace of technology? As you see, like, agents are getting new things all the time, right? So how do I make sure that my agents are the most efficient moving forward? Is this something where I've got to revisit my agents and now I've got to worry about the management overhead of that because I now have a swarm approach to my agents? Or is this something like, no, I've done the best that I can and I'll get back to it if it's something that's pressing? What are your thoughts on that, Mark?
So I think you're going to need an orchestrator that acts on your behalf, right? That your orchestrator will manage multiple agents. I always look at the work that I can do as like, how can I scale everything I do? And one of the things I'm doing is trying to remove every admin function out of my life. Like, can I stop even having email that I respond to? And so at the moment, I am employing virtual assistants to actually manage all that for me, all my scheduling, and what they're surfacing to me is the stuff that absolutely needs my brain on it, but they're not saying, look at this email, is they might have an audio conversation with me at say, blah, 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 do this. Now, I've got currently 3 VAs working for me across different things, whether it's running my podcast, whether that type of thing. And so now I'm getting to the point where I'm going to need to add, because, and when I talked about SOPs, I'm getting VAs to actually implement my SOPs because what I'm doing is refining them so that when I really get to the point that I know agents are going to be on fire for this, I'm going to be able to give a very thorough instruction set to that agent to act on my behalf. That's got all this learning history because I'm about 9 months into history now on that as well. I'm going to need an orchestrator, right? Because as you say, if I've got 1,000 agents working for me, I can't be monitoring each and individual agent out there. So I think I'm going to need then an agent over the top of those agents, that is my orchestration agent, that is handling and checking that, one, are they acting correctly? Two, have they been updated with anything they need to be updated with around protocols, procedures, etc., like that? And then what are they also telling me about how I can improve from a process automation perspective? How can we scale that exponentially to, be on the lookout for the what if scenarios and run intervention protocols around those? And so I think, the role of an orchestrator is going to be coming key for driving that type of scale.
No, that makes sense. There seems to be a lot of opportunity with agents, and not only just having these great plans of I know what I want to do, I know I need to bring it. The other side of that coin is where do I start? Like you have, super successful business and you've got a lot of things you need to automate and bring agents into. Not everybody has that, right? And they have their day-to-day duties that they work on, but any tips on addressing the best agents, like or the best business processes to have an agent adapt to? Like, where do you get started there?
I think the key thing is not to overguess or go, am I going to do the right thing the first time? The key thing is to start. So if nothing else, I think that everybody needs to get access to Copilot Studio and start learning it. Start with the Microsoft Learn stuff, get on and practice. Like one of the illustrations I give, if I took a Rembrandt piece of art and put it in front of you, and I gave you the exact oils, brushes, canvas that Rembrandt used to create that artwork, would your artwork be on the same level of quality as a Rembrandt piece of artwork, right? Probably not. What was the difference? Practice, 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 right? The art is developed over time because the artist keeps applying their skills. Right now, I'm seeing so many people going, oh, I tried AI once, or I tried to automate something once, or I tried an agent once and it didn't work. So like this sucks. This technology doesn't really have any merit to it. And I'm like, I think you're probably the thing that sucks in the equation here, because you actually need to learn to have a conversation and build out and iterate on an idea, especially when everything is so new, because I think I saw a stat the other day, 80% of all prompts fail to get what the individual wanted. In fact, I saw that this morning in a Superhuman newsletter that I subscribe to. And it was an interesting data point, is that people expect unbelievable things from the technology on day one, and they've actually got to develop their own skills. So when we come to agents, I think the key thing is get going, like start using it. You see yourself a goal of building one agent a day in Copilot Studio, right? I tell you, but in a year's time, you're going to be way ahead of the curve of everybody else, because you're going to learn so much about what doesn't work and what creates a really effective agent. And so I can't put too much emphasis on the need to, one, develop your skills and practice. You can't just be book smart on this. You need to practice, because I don't think you're going to wake up in 2 years' time and all of a sudden be able to go, oh, I'm going to, do this and have the level of experience that someone that spent the last 2 years practicing daily. And it's got to be that regular. Like I set myself 2 years ago a goal to do 5 prompts a day. Now I'd hardly go past an hour without doing way more than that per hour in my work life. Yeah. And of course, my prompting has got way smarter. I have ways of prompting that, and because one, I don't consider prompting as a Q&A process. I consider it as a conversation. And so when it doesn't give me the answer I want, I'm going to go back to it and say, no, that's not what I meant. I meant, I understand what you're talking about now. Just like a human being, right? So much of this stuff and how we interface with the computers, I think people all of a sudden switch off their human element and forget that in real life, if you gave me the wrong answer to my question and I realized you didn't understand what I was asking, I'm not going to go, hang up the phone, goodbye, I'm not talking to Sean anymore, because he has just no idea, right? You don't. It's a nuance of conversation. You develop it with the person you're talking with. And so one of the metaphors I use is a sparring partner, or I always see AI as a sparring partner. And as I move into agents, the same type of thing. I want it to test my ideas. I want it to challenge my thinking. And so therefore I prompt differently to get that behavior back from the AI I'm working with.
I love that approach. And I agree, right? It is one, practice, and then refining your prompts to to get the answer that you want. And also, thank you, Mark, for writing my marketing copy. The thing that sucks is you in this equation. So I'm going to use that going forward. I appreciate that. So, hey, Mark, real quick, where can people, I know I mentioned all the podcasts that you host up front, but where can people catch you before we close out?
LinkedIn, send me a message there. That's easy. NZ365 Guy. If you search out on LinkedIn, you'll find me. In fact, if you just search NZ365 Guy, period, even ask any of your AIs, they all know about me. So
say hi to your AI for me. Hey, Mark, thank you so much for joining us. Greatly appreciate your time. And I really want to bring you back on and get your thoughts in 6 months' time and see, what's changed, how things are moving more efficiently for you, or did the brakes fall off, and see what happened at that point. Really appreciate having you on, Mark. It's been great.
thank you.